everyone. I'm here with Brett and Eddie, and I thought that it might be nice to just talk a little bit about, nerd out a little bit, I guess, about the solo violin repertoire. Given that I have the Ysaÿe sonatas recorded and Bach sonatas and partitas and 6 partitas by Anton Garcia Abril. And then there's all this other stuff around these pieces, and in between them, the solo violin repertoire, the sets of solo pieces are kind of spaced apart in music history, so they capture different things about the instrument and about the individuals who wrote for the instrument, but so much is left up to the performer and so much is left unspecified in the music. So that's where violinists come in, and I thought it'd be fun for us to talk about it because, you know, when musicians hang out, sometimes we do talk a lot about the repertoire, but sometimes there's not an opportunity to kind of like get into some little details and see what our different experiences have been. So I guess we could start from the point of experience, like what of the, so for example, the Ysaÿe sonatas, what is, what's your like history with them? What's your impression of them? What's the reality and the legend?
I mean, I know there's 6 of them.
Yeah.
I've only really performed one. This is a Ballade, this is number 3. I tried playing number 6, but
it looks shortest.
Yes, but then I think this was it was very difficult for me to remember going for the first page. But it was a challenge. I enjoyed practicing it, so I never really performed it. But that's kind of my history with Ysaÿe sonatas.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, I learned all 6 really easy, you know. In uni, it just took me 2 weeks. No, I'm just kidding.
A couple of weeks, yeah.
I'm the same, actually. I've only done number 3, Ballade. I think that's probably the most famous, well-known one.
Do you think that's part of maybe the learning repertoire too? Like when we're in school, it's part of the progression?
I think so.
We learn Bach and we learn something by Ysaÿe.
Yes. It's always like a Paganini Caprice, but then it's like, you know, I think the Ysaÿe, the third one was the one that most people pick up.
Yeah, I think it's the most, at least at the time when we were in uni, it was the cool, hot, trending one. It was the one that everyone wanted to learn.
Yeah.
I remember hearing it in so many master classes when I was a student.
Oh, wow. So even you heard a lot of people
that's
play.
the one I knew by ear the best as well.
Yes.
I'm curious, which one do you think is the most difficult, if you think there's one?
I think there's consensus that number 6 is the most difficult.
See?
So the fact that you tried it and it didn't work out, that is the story of many people.
Makes sense now.
Many people open the volume and they're like, oh, number 6 looks like, you know, the one that I want to work on. And then it's gnarly, like Paganini gnarly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I left out, of course, the Paganini Caprices in my list of the solo sets. And I think, so in Ysaÿe's time already, there was the Bach and Paganini, and Ernst was already in existence, right? I think the Ernst slightly predates the Ysaÿe, but any of you who want to tell me otherwise,
gonna need a fact check.
Did not research that before this conversation. But yeah, number 6 is the densest technically. It has these sequences of intervals that are hard to hit. And it's not that the whole time you're doing that, but also in the middle, it's dedicated to a Spanish violinist, and so there's a bit of a quote of Spanish rhythm.
Oh, that's why they put that.
Yeah, in these sonatas, he put in a lot of like inside messages to the violinists they're dedicated to. Each one is to a different player.
I don't think I ever made it to that part of it. But I know that existed.
Yeah, because you have to get through. It's a little like some of the Paganini Caprices that have a bunch of technical stuff in the exposition, or like one style of technique, and then there's another section, and then it returns to it at the end. A tiny bit of that happening in the 6th.
Wait, is the 6th the one that's at da 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 da? Or is that something completely different? I'm seeing something different.
I can't recognize
It's
what you're
just
saying.
da-da.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be double stops, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, da-da-da-da-yum.
The D.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, it's
And then
but it's that
oh, the-
beginning on its own is just
yeah,
Oh, then
Really
then
and then it's like
And you
da
have
da 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 da, right? No.
da-dum, ba-dum,
Oh, no. Okay, sorry.
da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, I remember now.
Oh,
I remember
flashbacks.
hearing you practice that.
Flashbacks.
Yeah.
I don't know why I tried that.
But it's also hard because it's free. Like if you play it rhythmically, which technically makes more sense, it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
but I love the sixes. I think because the opening is so catchy. It's just everything you can do on the violin. It's just
Yes.
like, here it is, and it's really bright. I would say. I
Yeah.
feel like it's
Everything you can or can't do on the violin.
Yeah.
We'll be sure.
But it's short, and then you get into a melody.
Yeah,
but then you
never-
have another passage.
Yeah, then a whole other passage. But it's true. When you look at it, it's kind of sure. You go, oh, I could try this. You know, make it through. But no.
I think the rests in that opening are almost as scary as the technique
Yes.
because you hear what you just did. It rings.
Yeah. Singers.
Did I hit the notes? Yeah.
If you could just barrel through it without the rests, I think it might feel
A bit better.
a little more
Okay.
comfortable. Yeah. And there's the one that is like a Bach quote.
Oh yes, that's number 2. No,
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Obsession.
yeah.
Obsession. Yeah.
Because Thibaut used to, I think that's the one dedicated to Thibaut.
Thibaut, yeah.
He used to practice like that. Like he would do a little bit of this preludio, and then he would do something else, and he'd return to whatever else it was. He kind of
Wow.
like
That's so
cycle
cool.
through whatever he was practicing is the
Really?
story. Yeah. And so Ysaÿe knew him and wanted to kind of like encapsulate this aspect of his musicality or his method. And it's like a secret message also, like, hey, I know you.
I see.
That's
like a
really
little,
cool.
little portrait, maybe poking a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
But interspersed with that throughout that sonata is Dies Irae, the melody da 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 bum, da 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 da, which is very much like referencing. It's like a funereal reference for the dead, and so it's interesting. It's like Bach was very religious, and then Dies Irae is like a more Catholic religious reference. And in the middle of that also is some stuff that sounds a little like a Bach chorale, like one of the Bach hymns. So, you know, you have like in Ysaÿe, you have these layers of things that you recognize. And then the
And that's why it's kind of always going like
surprising.
back and forth.
Oh yeah. Da, 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 da,
That's yeah.
Right.
Dun.
da,
Oh, I don't know.
You're on the G string
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
middle
no,
of
no,
each
that makes sense.
arpeggio.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact bow pattern.
Looks like you're cooking up
I know.
mixing
It's like
some.
sideways cooking.
Need a lot of
Not like this. Like,
Need a lot of techniques for these like.
Yeah. Do you have a different approach when it comes to tackling solo violin repertoire versus maybe sonatas or concertos? Or do you kind of just treat it all the same music?
I think when I practice it, I know that I'm practicing every part of it. So I want to make sure that I know what all the parts of it are. Whereas if I'm doing a sonata or a concerto, I guess I'm aware that it's part of something more. So I don't want to get too attached when I'm practicing a sonata or a concerto. I don't want to get too attached to my own interpretation of my own line. I want to know sort of what the options are. But when it's solo, I also don't want to get attached to one particular way of playing it, because then it's torture in my head when there's a helicopter outside. We're in central London, in this beautiful house
Yeah.
along the river, so we hear some river and London noises. But yeah, there's this feeling that I get on stage when I'm playing something solo, that sometimes if I feel like something isn't working, I can get in my head a lot. So if I have only one way to play it, and I don't know what structure I want to do to get myself out of whatever groove I feel isn't working, if I'm stuck in one way of playing it and I can't I don't feel like it's resonating either for me or the audience. It can be kind of, it's mental torture. So I like to know the structures, I like to know how things can interplay differently, and then I like to remind myself that the open spaces are important.
I
The
see.
rests are important. To not just barrel through.
That's true, actually. So a side
I
tangent.
want to know what you guys think of like the differences.
Well,
Or your tangent. I want to know. Your tangent.
I was just thinking about what you said about the spaces and how you don't get locked into one interpretation. It's really interesting because recently we saw a Steinway piano which records how people play, and you know, the keystrokes, timing, even the depth to some degree. I mean, apparently the pressure is not necessarily like 100% nuanced, but it's pretty insanely good. And so then the piano plays itself, right?
Yeah.
And it saves it. But then we're talking to Sophie, the pianist we're traveling with, and she said, well, the problem is a musician performing live will naturally adapt the interpretation to the space because the acoustics are different.
Good point.
So if you record a soloist perform in a 2,000 seat hall and then you play it in a small room like that, it won't actually sound good.
That's true.
Yeah, it won't be suitable for the...
And so actually, even on the interpretation note, we'd probably be making all these micro adjustments depending on where we're playing anyway.
Yeah, that's really true. And when you're on the stage by yourself, you're very aware. You can. There's
Yeah, you
nothing to
can-
distract or bury your impressions.
Yeah.
And you don't see anyone going in any particular direction on stage with their playing. So you're doing it all yourself. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're working in an ensemble, you can kind of
yes.
like see where people are in their performance. You can see if they're feeling good, if they maybe seem to be having a tendency to go slower or faster, and you kind of lock into that.
Yeah, true.
But on stage, you can get like really out ahead of your skis sometimes too, like just with adrenaline.
So it can be a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
if there's other members on stage and you're rushing, they can kind of like hold you back and like keep you calm. But then at the same time,
If you're by yourself and you're nervous or just adrenaline kicks in.
yeah. But then by yourself, you can be free to do whatever
Whatever you want.
interpretation you want.
Also,
Whereas-
rhythmically, you don't have to coordinate with anyone. So if you really want to do something that would be pretty hard to put together with a whole orchestra, you can always, at a certain point, you shouldn't be holding yourself back from things you want to do that are authentically you just because you're afraid that it won't work for the other people on stage. But then there's a collaborative outreach, you know, like naturally it should be.
Yeah.
When you're by yourself, you can like take super different tempi, you can be super free, you can not have to like show where you're going to arrive in the music if you have a passage going into a transition.
Yeah.
If you get to a note and suddenly decide to hold it, you can just hold it.
Yeah.
There's no one who's going to like be thrown off or something will be misunderstood, so then you have another interpretive problem later down the line.
That's so true.
That's so
It's
true.
very, very free. But there's also no one to like stop the thoughts in your head. With all the focus, sometimes adrenaline can like really amplify if you get in a loop, like a negative thought loop on stage.
I mean, I agree. I
You just want
definitely.
to sink through the stage. You just want to like
Yeah.
disappear.
Oh, God.
Like, no,
Everyone's
but you
just
have to be
listening.
brave.
Yeah.
Finish the piece.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like playing solo Bach back in uni was one of the most like vulnerable experiences. Just every scratch that you make can be heard, that
Comes out,
resonates.
everyone
It's
knows
just
it.
like, oh man, like the chord, string chord thing.
Yeah.
So
Do you remember playing the Ballade?
yes, very vividly and almost traumatically, yes.
Was there any sort of style question for you in that piece? Because I remember when I would go to master classes and someone would play the Ballade, a lot of the teachers would sort of try to zero in on some rhythmic thing or some phrasing
I for one.
thing.
I remember playing the Ballade for this quartet. I've totally forgot. Is it Albenberg String Quartet? One of the violinists there. And it was a master class Like you said, it's always shows up in a lot of master classes. And we worked on the opening for so long.
Oh, that opening's so
I
hard.
remember that in so many master classes.
It's just that opening. It's like it's always about like starting soft, getting to and getting more sound. The crescendo, the phrase has to go all the way to the end. And I really struggled with that. Just sometimes I'm trying to change a bow, the sound sticks out, and then even the last note, da da da, you had to sustain the sound, and then, I'm still.
And then probably you got a comment that you should keep it going through the rest.
Yeah, just keep going. It's like this sort of. Whoa. That was the big one.
Yeah.
That really.
It's a bit of an amorphous opening.
Yeah, and it's. I love the opening. It's just really cool, and like you said, it's kind of you have the freedom, kind of thing, like just play through it. But I remember that's the one I worked on.
Yeah.
And then da-dum, da-da.
That as well.
Da-dum, da-da. Some people take like a lot of time, or it's awkward bowing in a way.
Yes.
If you try to be too literal about it. And so I remember lots of, like anyone who was practicing the Ballade, you would hear that over and over and over, and then it gets stuck in your head. And then in the master class, there'd be a stop for that part.
Yeah.
There's always a stop on that part.
Gotta work on that.
Yeah, you work on that part. Everyone has a comment on that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I haven't played the other ballades. I mean, the sonatas, but the ballade is really. I feel like it takes you through a lot of the journey. Just kind of, a lot of stuff happens. And you have the middle part where it's like really mysterious, like and then you have the ending, which is very fiery and virtuosic, and trying to make it to the top, which I kind of just turn off my brain, just hope I can make it to the end.
Kind of know basically where you're headed.
Yeah, it's like that's where I'm going. I don't know. I hope I practice enough. Yeah.
Look dramatic.
Look dramatic. Yeah.
And then the applause comes.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, good.
But I really enjoyed playing it, actually. Ballade, I really love performing it actually. So.
It requires a lot. You have to engage with it.
Yes. There's so many places we can express kind of, even physically, right? How you're gonna show what you do. Yeah. But
like for the preparation question though, like when you do your shows, do you have any individual solo things that you're working on, and then you do a lot of stuff together? You do multimedia preparation, which is also a collaboration. So
Right, with the screen and the timing for that.
Yeah.
I bet some of this has a parallel in all of that too.
Definitely.
But it's definitely like when you say the space or the rest.
Yeah.
Oh, in a hall with speaking or like with a screen.
Screen. It's
That's
always
an
like
interesting challenge for recording it.
But also I feel like there's space to improvise, not just playing, also what we say and do. Also, even for the audience to interact with us.
Yeah. Brett's very good at bouncing off the audience.
It depends on my state of mind. I need to be in the right.
I remember we had a concert in Hong Kong recently, and there was a slight malfunction. It's funny because he played it off so naturally that people thought it was part of the show, but there was like a haze smoke machine, and while we were talking, it just went psst, and just shot out a puff of smoke.
And I was saying something, I just and I was like, oh.
I can't remember what you said, but you're like, oh, I smell char siu pork or something like that.
Yeah, because we talked about dishes in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's definitely the char siu being prepared. I don't know, I had to play it off because I did panic a bit. I was like, oh, something just wasn't supposed to go off now. Yeah.
I've had times when I try to talk to the audience, like either talk or you don't, or I'm talking to the audience and I find that if it's not in my voice, it doesn't communicate. If I'm trying to remember a script or I'm trying to say something, it doesn't really communicate, or I try to make a joke, but I'm not confident, and silence. But then I say something I don't think is funny and everyone laughs. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, that's good. Everyone's having fun. But I think sometimes when you're performing the music too, the things that you think will work don't work, especially if you're trying to play it a way that you planned. But then if you have enough experience with performance, you can kind of, your range of things, and you can improvise within that range. You can try something new. It's not like the audience is saying something back or like laughing or giving any confirmation, but you feel if it's in the groove, and if it's not, you want to fix it.
Yeah, I think
So that's where that flexibility and improvisatory aspect is good.
I love how you mentioned that because I think there's some parallels. People love that authentic side of the performer.
Yeah.
It's not just pre-rehearsed or something. You know, you say practice something in, might not work, or we have a line might not work. Of course, we still have to practice. Of course, we have to say the lines in order for the performance to move along, right? But I do think the audience generally do feel the authenticity of just you being there, and like that's why you have that response. We find that too. Usually when we're just being ourselves, I think people love that more.
Well, you're authentic in your videos, and so then on stage you can be.
Yeah, as I say, they know
authentic.
it's us. We're just sharing, just us in this moment in time. Sometimes I do feel like, is this funny? Should I even saying it? And often enough, if it's just something that just flows, people will enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the best advice we've gotten was if you're trying to be funny, don't start off trying to be funny, start off trying to be authentic. Talk about things that are real to you, and then you can have fun with it. But if your starting ground is how can I make people laugh, or how can I get a reaction out of people, even if it's things that used to be authentic in the past and you knew it got a laugh, but you know, we all change, time happens, you know? And over time, you get to a point where it's like, I don't actually feel that anymore. I'm just saying that because I know it used to get laughs. It won't work anyhow. To kind of stay connected to how you feel inside.
Yeah, people feel that, like you're not congruent to who you really are, even though it was worked before. I like that. I know. I think I know what that situation is talking about. It's very clear. Like we think, oh, this will work at past, but it won't.
Yeah.
So because people know you grow, we evolve, we learn, we become, you know, mature, I guess, and things change, and I think people appreciate that. That's the similar to when you play violin on stage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting, like, for example, with, well, I guess when we learn, like, Paganini Caprices, we learn the Ballade, whatever we learn in school, it's one context. Playing for your teacher is one audience. But then playing on stage, after you graduate, when, you know, you've had time to have to figure it out yourself, that's another context. And yeah, even if it's something that your teacher told you to do 10 years ago, may not work right now anymore. And so, yeah, I think understanding yourself, understanding the space that the audience needs in order to have a joint experience with you. That's why I think the spaces in the music are really important, because you need some time to process. You need some time to kind of like settle from an exciting moment into the same place. And then the thing about solo is you don't have to cue anyone in when it's time. You don't have to be like, oh, someone's gonna jump the entrance. No, you just wait until it feels like everything is quiet. Then you play the next note in these particular circumstances. And then there's also like how a composer writes. So Paganini, over the course of the 24 Caprices, I wish I could be in his head and know how he kept coming up with the material for each caprice. Ysaÿe, and same for Bach, although Bach was very prolific. He was having to write all the time, and so I think this was like more, maybe the sonatas and partitas were sort of a passion project for him. So it was probably natural flow for him. But Ysaÿe was a touring artist. He also was a conductor, a teacher, very influential, had a lot of friends who were really important composers, and he did a lot of premieres himself of pieces written for him. So he knew the way people toured back then. They spent a lot of time face to face with the people that they knew, and then when they weren't together, they weren't together. So there were some boat rides, you know, they would be on the same ship crossing the Atlantic for concerts, and just interesting ways of having creative time. But he went to a concert that Joseph Szigeti, the great violinist, who was, I think he was maybe a little older than Ysaÿe, but again, feel free to fact check. But he went to a concert where Szigeti played Bach solo material, and I think maybe the first, the G minor sonata. Again, please jump in. And I think that hearing Szigeti play this Bach sonata, Ysaÿe realized that violin technique has changed, and what we assume is the baseline technique has developed, but what Bach did was super valuable. So he wrote the first of the sonatas for Szigeti, and it has a lot of elements that are like a Bach sonata. The structure, how the movements are titled, the way the speed of the movements develops, the structure of the movements is very much like that sonata, but with some stuff added in, like 6-note chords instead of 4-note chords. Like it's double stacked, like with a double stop and then a 4-note chord. But because Ysaÿe was such a great violinist, he knew how to make that happen. He knew how to write it, so it didn't look like he was writing the impossible. And I think that was his way of updating. And from there, I guess he was like, oh, I have more ideas. So then he continued the cycle. My impression is he didn't start out to write 6. He wrote the one, and then he was like, oh, I want to write for other people. More ideas. That was interesting. And he also was really intentional in who he wrote for. He wrote for people who were established. He wrote for people who he was mentoring. He wrote for people who he wanted to leave in history, like put a little bookmark there on that person's career. And that's why, like, the 6th sonata was written for Manuel Quiroga, and that's how we know a little bit about his playing style too. Because Ysaÿe wrote each sonata, if you play all 6, unlike the Paganini Caprices, which were written by one person basically for himself to play, Ysaÿe knew all of these players so well that not only did he write in like little secret messages we will never know from maybe chamber music reading sessions or inside jokes, but he also customized them to the player's technique. So when I play them, I feel like I get to inhabit a little bit of the physical world of
that's
those
so
players.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow, you're like reliving kind of like what those musicians do and their habits and the kind of their skills sets.
Who's your favorite violinist from history? So Ysaÿe was born in the 1850s, so like in his time frame, so like maybe early 1900s or from the early days of recording.
I was going to ask, if you had to write to dedicate to 6 violinists, which 6 would you pick, alive or dead?
Oh,
that'd be interesting.
That'd be interesting.
And how would you write for it?
We'll start with like your favorite violinist from Ysaÿe's time.
What was it again, 1800s?
Well, think about the earliest days of recording.
Okay.
Wow, okay, oh.
He was one of the first recorded artists, Ysaÿe.
Sarasate?
Sarasate. Chrysler was there, yeah.
I think writing for Oistrakh might be pretty cool. David Oistrakh.
I wish I was...
I think if a composer wrote for like, for me and for Janine, it would be very different ways of writing. If you imagine, like, the place we play from is very different. And I love Janine's playing. She's such a wonderful person too. Janine? And so I think if you think about like gesturally, tonally, how we play, and also like technique-wise and volume, like how we interpret volume and everything, it comes from like quite a different place, but I think people can appreciate both of our playing, and we're sort of similar in age too, and you know we.
Someone's got to do
that. Someone has to do that.
Someone has to do that.
But that, if you think about that, we'll talk about like contemporary violinists, and then you know, Randall Gooseby, who's a great violinist who has like this elegance in his playing. So you think about like if someone were to write something for Randall, like how would they write into that like combo of virtuosity and elegance. And if you think back to like Jeanette Neveu, for example, who had this super intensity.
I love the recording.
How would they write for her in the same set? So that's like 4 people. So then like 2 more people who are contrasting, Oistrakh, Chrysler.
Yeah. Chrysler will be very different.
So imagine then playing as one person, playing all of those pieces.
So you have to have the abilities of all 6 violinists.
Or you learn, like you then get to absorb things you never knew were really a way of playing.
Yeah.
But if a violinist wrote for all of us,
knowing
technique and knowing like what they loved in each of our styles, and that'd be so insightful, right?
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
So that's basically like these sonatas are really unique that way in the solo repertoire, because they're for his friends and my colleagues and different types of players.
It's almost like Marvel Avengers United, but in a composition.
In the book, These are they all have different.
All the epic.
Now we're nerding out. Name the violinists, and now we're in Marvel. Well, I think. Is there anything that you guys would like to add? I think I may be nearing the time limit for this particular video.
Possibly.
I think
possibly hit the time limit. Yeah. I'm just really looking forward to hearing the album.
Same here. I really want to hear it. So.
Yeah.
And I might have the confidence to pick up number 6.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I want to check out.
Start slow.
Start slow, yeah.
Do the rest. Reset. Don't play the next phrase till you're ready.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
So you're in your world tour, and I'm in my summer of like festivals and touring. So it's funny, we met up this time in London.
Yes.
Not planned at all, just
just coincidentally in the same place.
Same place.
I'm here to play chamber music at Wigmore, and you're here for your show.
Yeah. We've met up in 3 different continents now.
Yeah. Nice.
Because we first met in New York, and then I played on you guys' shows. And It was like Boston and Philly.
Right? Boston, Philly, and then
Sydney.
Now we're here in London.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.